It is Friday, June 10th, 2022. It is 12:02 p.m. I'd like to call to order the Urbana Public Television Commission meeting. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Marie Polk.
Present.
Commissioner Sarah Bennett.
Present.
Commissioner Mark Schultz.
Present.
And on the phone, Commissioner Peter Folk.
Hi there. No, present.
And just a note, Commissioner Folk let us know ahead of time that he was ill today and he is dialing in. And Commissioner Schultz kindly agreed to be the chair for today's meeting.
And we hope you feel better, Commissioner Polk.
And I'd also like to note, we do have a new member of the commission from the school district, and that is going to be John Gutzmer. He will be joining us in the future, but he let me know in advance that he could not make it here today. But we do have, and Commissioner Cinder, we identified this in March, he has resigned from the UPTV commission. So we have 5 members and we have 4 of them, so therefore we have a quorum.
Very good. Next item of business, approval of minutes of the previous meetings of June 11th, 2021 and March 11th, 2022. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from previous meetings dated June 11th, 2021 and March 11th, 2022.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I second.
Question is approval of the minutes of June 11th, 2021 and March 11th, 2022. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Motion carries. Minutes approved. Is there any correspondence?
There was no correspondence with the commission since the last one. Okay.
Thank you. And staff report.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Just reintroducing myself for those who are watching at home. I'm Sanford Hess. I'm the IT director for this city, and I am the administrative manager for UPTV as well. And during this time, I am fulfilling some of the functions of the UPTV station manager. So just briefly on the staff report, 2 different items. One that I mentioned last time, but has taken us slightly longer to roll out than I hoped for, which is providing city email addresses for committee members who do not work for an entity that is a public entity. So, for example, Commissioner Folk, Commissioner Polk, you will be receiving city email addresses that we will use and encourage you to use for all of your commission-related communication. And just briefly, the 2 main drivers for this, one is that we did not want to present people's personal information, which we do list as part of the board and commission information. So we wanted to get their personal email addresses out of that to not make them, targets for any additional spam or malware. The other aspect goes back to Freedom of Information Act requests, so that if there is a Freedom of Information Act request for their communication, we have the ability to do that search for them and do not require people to search their own records and provide content. So that will be rolling out in the next few weeks, though. The other item in the staff report is the 2023 budget. So one of the items that I did since the last meeting was refresh myself with some of the past history of the commission. When the UPTV Commission wrote up its rules, it identified that the budget should be presented annually. So I have provided hard copies for you here in the room. If you are at home and want to see the same information, this is part of the fiscal year 23 proposed budget, and that is on the city's website. And the page numbers are confusing. There's PDF page numbers if you're looking at a soft copy, or at the bottom of the page there's a number. So I'm going to reference it by the printed page number. So the first item I'm going to point out is on page 55, and at the top of the page it starts with 110,107, the UPTV General Fund. This is the salaries related costs of UPTV. You will notice that the 23 proposed budget on the far right is similar to the FY22 budget. This is because we do not have a planned change in staffing for fiscal year 23. Our staffing consists of one full-time employee, and that's Burema Uedraogo. I hope I'm saying that properly, Burema. And we also have 3 part-time camera operators and 1 part-time production assistant. You'll also notice that in the prior fiscal year, there was separation pay. That was related to closing out Jason Liggett. It was a one-time payout of accumulated benefits that he had not used. So there was a cost, it was not a severance, it just was, there was, accumulation of holidays and stuff. So that indicates our planned spending in the next fiscal year. And worth emphasizing is we will still not have a UPTV station manager. And I will continue to perform some of the functions of the station manager that are necessary for us to keep going, but there are other functions that will not be performed, and I think that will be part of our discussion under unfinished business. Any questions on this part of the budget?
My question, I think, will be dealt with under unfinished business as far as the station manager goes.
Understood.
So there is a significant decrease for proposed 23. Is that under insurance? Is that because we don't have a station manager on staff? Why is there a decrease there? I'm just curious.
That is very specific to the insurance choices made by the various employees.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so, yes, that's entirely driven on a person-by-person basis.
Okay.
What are the next steps that the commission needs to do as far as this budget goes?
The budget has been proposed to City Council, so I would say if there are suggestions, changes, the best thing to do would be provide feedback to the City Council members.
Okay, it's in City Council's hands now.
Yes.
Very good, thank you.
The other part of the budget is on printed page 147 and 148. From a fiscal management standpoint, this is a separate fund in the city government, separate from the general fund. And this is where the money from the cable companies that we receive for equipment, that's where that goes. And on page 148, you can see our planned spending, which includes equipment, services, machinery, etc., that is going to be budgeted for and purchased in the new fiscal year. I will note that there was a modification to the budget in the current year. So keeping in mind that the city is on a July 1 fiscal year, we're still in fiscal year 22 at this point. There was a budget amendment that was passed in May to increase UPTV spending in the current fiscal year of 22 by $50,000. And that is under the other equipment line down there. That is spending that was actually accelerated from future years. So we had already planned to do some equipment replacement, but we've accelerated that and brought it forward, and we are actively working on identifying a partner and consulting and the agreements. But that was a change since the last, it was a mid-year budget adjustment. But I guess what I want to emphasize about that is it was more money that was planned for future year spending was just brought forward. So in future years, where we would have spent more money, we'll have a lower budget because we've already replaced that equipment. Any questions on the budget in general? Okay. Something that we did in the past, and I will try to do a better job probably in the next meeting, is sort of presenting a list of the equipment that we have replaced. I will credit Barema. He's done a great job recently going through and identifying some of our out-of-date equipment and upgrading it. So, for example, some of the cameras that are available for public use, the tripods, microphones, and things like that, he's improved on. So it's we've actually been doing a decent amount of equipment upgrades very recently.
That's good news to hear that we can upgrade the equipment and have the best available that we can, of course, afford.
Yeah, and in fact, it's triggered some, as these things always do. We upgraded the camera equipment to the point where the video files that it's creating are so large and impressive that it's overpowering our computers for video editing. So that's triggering a round of upgrades to the computer equipment as well.
Any further questions for staff or anything further to report? Questions? Thank you very much. Moving on to audience participation, I see no physical audience participation. Do we have any virtual audience participation?
There is no method for virtual audience
Okay,
participation
very
with these
good.
in-person meetings.
All right, very good, thank you. And now we move on to unfinished business, discussion, UPTV's focus moving forward.
Excellent. Well, I will tee off this discussion, but I really hope this is a group one. I guess we'll start with the point that Commissioner Schultz was making about the UPTV station manager. So a little bit of a history here of how this has occurred. UPTV had 2 full-time staff members until approximately the end of 2019. And we had a UPTV station manager and a UPTV production coordinator. And Jake Schumacher was the station manager and Jason Liggett was the production coordinator. When Jake retired, Jason was promoted to station manager, but essentially did the duties of both jobs. And that's entirely to Jason's credit, and he was an incredible employee. So from, that was the end of 2019, and then in 2020, when the pandemic started, Jason continued to do the various things that he had to do, although some of the station manager duties that occurred in the past were less taxing. For example, there wasn't as much community-produced content being made during the pandemic. There were some shows that continued very, very well on Zoom, and some of them have continued on Zoom. But we had less content being produced. At the same time, Jason's responsibilities as the production coordinator grew more difficult during the Zoom meetings. So there was, his time was sort of balanced between these 2 parts of his role. When Jason gave us notice that he was going to resign last fall, we discussed options and priorities for UPTV. And something that I presented last time as part of the meeting was the prioritization that we came up with. The first thing that we prioritized were our meetings, whether it was city meetings or the other entities, because we have intergovernmental agreements with the park district, with the library, with the school district, with the RPC, with the housing authority, where we have a responsibility to staff those events. So that being our top priority, we focused on hiring somebody as a production coordinator because we needed to do those aspects. Those were the critical aspects of UPTV. And so Barema was promoted. At the time, he was our part-time production assistant. And we were thrilled to offer him a full-time role as the production coordinator, and he's done a great job ever since. So at the same time, we did not have budget for a second staff position. And as I've emphasized, that was something we did request, to be staffed in the new fiscal year, but is not going to be part of our budget. The station manager's role, I would describe to a large extent as content curation. So something that Jake was excellent at was finding great content, including it, scheduling it. You know, he spent a lot of time selecting what we were going to show, when we were going to show it. There's it's a bit like programming, it's programming a TV station is really what it is. You know, which shows are going to occur in which slots and et cetera, et cetera. So since that time, we have continued to feature some community-produced content. And as I mentioned, a lot of that is being done on Zoom, although I'm excited to say we do have a few shows that are now back to being recorded in person. And we do have a production assistant who is staffed here on Saturdays to support community-produced shows, back to the sort of rhythm of scheduling that we used to have. So, you know, as always, it's always exciting to see things coming back after the pandemic. And one of the ones I'm most excited about is that opportunity for the public to record shows. The part that's really fallen by the wayside, I would say, is the curation of content. And in particular, and again, this was something we talked about briefly in March, we have emphasized locally produced content over outside of our local area content. Again, Jake was very good about finding and programming great public access content from around the country. Watching those shows, curating that content, selecting what's going to be on is just one of those action items that has not been done since Jason left. So if there's one area that UPTV is diminished in, it's the range and breadth of the different content that's being broadcast. I would say, to put it starkly, what you're seeing a lot more of on UPTV these days is the bulletin board. So that is the way I see the status quo. And what I'm open to here is a creative discussion about ways to bring back some of the broader amount of curation that made UPTV what it was.
So my first thought is, are there partnerships that we could leverage to help fill that role? Could we use community volunteers to fill that role, just like we have or have had a good pool of community producers? Could we open up that role as something for community volunteers to do? Or other partnerships with, high schools, colleges, and universities. They have programs that align with what you're trying to accomplish. Are there opportunities there?
It's a great question. I believe the answer is yes, but that's only the beginning of the process. What would be some suggestions about ways to start those conversations?
I would say that this commission, you and any others who might have connections, first start with a list of potential partners and contacts. Maybe there's an opportunity to host, I know at least once or twice a year, we used to host an open house. Maybe there is an opportunity to host an open house where we talk about the future of UPTV, what the needs are. I think that would be a great starting point. And then based on feedback responses for that, maybe we have to do it 1 or 2 times. And then based on that, we could devise a plan on what the go forward looks like.
Excellent. That's good thoughts.
I don't know how I raised my hand.
Go ahead.
There's quite an echo. I'm going to turn myself down. The role, would the existing staff be able to support that role by, for example, telling telling whoever ends up being involved in the curation, whether it's a single person or a group, we have this many half-hour slots to fill, or 20-minute slots, or whatever they end up being to fill. And then if the group identifies content for some portion of those, would the existing staff be able to handle the scheduling and putting those on, or is that something that the current staff would not be able to handle?
I think current staff could handle that. It is, there's effort involved in scheduling, but it's also relatively technical. So it's not something that, just anybody could log on and schedule. So I think staff could handle that, and staff would also be able to say, here is the schedule of meetings that we know about for the upcoming 2 weeks. Here are the open slots around them. And, so I believe all the things you described, that would be in our ability to do.
What if
Okay,
and
good.
okay, go ahead.
No, that's it. That's it.
What if any partnerships, collaborations have we with the University of Illinois and their broadcasting and TV production classes, and any going on at Parkland for that matter? I know, as an aspiring broadcaster in another lifetime, I would have loved to have had an opportunity to produce content and quote unquote be on the air, to produce, have my own, 10-minute commentary show, or call play-by-play of the basketball game, or whatever, when I was in college. I know they have UI7, but I wonder if there would be a continued opportunity for aspiring broadcasters, producers, editors, filmmakers to be able to use UI7 for their educational purposes, and we get some pretty good content out of it.
Well, in addition to UI7, which is the University of Illinois' channel, Parkland also has a channel. So each of them, from the cable agreement, does have their own channel. But we have, in the past, we had more interaction with those channels. So it's a point of contact. We can find out what sort of excess of content they might have, or to be honest, we could also look into just sharing content with them. Community produced content could be replayed on UPTV. There's nothing wrong with that.
We could also reach out to the professors at Parkland and U of I that are involved in that, and perhaps find an internship or create an internship to handle part of that content curation role. I think that's actually something a student might do very well at.
Those are great thoughts. More thoughts?
Do the community members who were previously making shows before the pandemic who haven't returned, do they know that it's an option to come back? Have they been told?
It's a good question. I'm not aware of us making a communication out, sort of by email or other methods to them. One thing that, and I will be, I'll be honest here. Jason took care of so much of this that I just never had to get involved. But I'm willing to believe that somewhere we have a list of emails and contact information for members. We do. So, going back to Commissioner Polk's suggestion about the sort of, we used to have once a year meetings for UPTV members, and we can do some communication out. We'll just have to find that list and reassemble it. But so, again, it's some of them are aware, but I agree with you that we need to do a better job pushing the word out.
I think just a little bit of publicity could go a long way to get people involved and interested. And I love your open house idea, and maybe even just like an afternoon orientation for people who are interested, could get people.
Okay.
And if we could have a well-defined internship offering, students will jump at that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For credit or for not credit, they would just very much go for that.
That's a good suggestion. I also like the suggestion of community volunteers. Particularly if there are some people who want to be part of UPTV but aren't really desiring of making their own content. Having people who would, watch shows and recommend, hey, this one's a good one. That type of volunteering is needed as well. And I think, we can make it really more of, try to bring in people from all phases of their life for that.
One idea that just flew into my mind, so you've been warned, it flew into my mind. There are several former broadcasters in the community who do other jobs. Like myself, I'm a former radio broadcaster now doing a marketing and public affairs job. I can count on one hand quickly the broadcasters in the area, former broadcasters doing the same thing. They have knowledge, they know how to talk, they know how an editing bank works. They have jobs themselves, and they left the industry for one reason or another. But I know that there are broadcasters out there that have talents that they might be able to come on board and do something, or maybe they need to scratch the itch. They're making a fine living now at their non-broadcasting job, but it might be kind of fun to get back there and dabble in it a little bit. Kind of like what I'm doing with Mark in the Park, but that might be something. And I think we can know in our contacts in the community at the university, various former broadcasters.
I'm married to one myself. Well, let's take that a little farther. So let's say that you were going to reach out to people with this sort of idea. What would you need if you were going to communicate to them to make it sound like something beyond just, hey, here's an idea? Like what sort of collateral would you need? Would you need a website? Would you need text? Would you need documents?
In other words, what will we need to make the pitch to the person? I would say a type of a one-pager of what UPTV is and what it does. Maybe they know all about it, maybe they don't. Possibly the type of equipment that we have. Maybe if somebody hasn't been in the broadcasting field for 10, 15 years, they say, oh man, we used VHS tapes back when I worked. I wouldn't know the first thing how to do it. Promote the user friendliness of the quick, user friendliness and quick training, you'll pick it up really quick. I would say that the biggest thing is if you want to become involved in a production or if you want to produce content, it is what you put into it. It can be as elaborate or as simple as you wish. Of course, UPTV has quality. We want good quality programming, but again, it's not something where there's going to be a station manager or a news director haranguing you over sound bites and you went 5:05 and you were supposed to go 5 minutes or something along those lines.
It would be nice to also give some descriptions on the roles that need to be filled and how they might be able to engage and participate. I would, if I were on that end, I would definitely want to see some produced work so that, like the reels that we used to do, something that showcases all of that, some variety of what is currently being produced. Anything that speaks to awards, recognition, that speaks to the quality of the productions that are created. Anything like that.
Excellent. I like this last discussion because it gives me, in my mind, something concrete that we can work on, say, between now and the next commission meeting, to present back and say, well, we've taken some time to think about how to describe these things and use you as our sounding board. And then I would say that we will also be using the commission members as our, because you have networks of contacts, and we can start rolling out from there. Always keeping in mind that we are a government entity, so everything takes a while. So, I can't promise this will be next week or, even next month, but I think that having something prepared for the next commission meeting would be a good target.
And I would add that if we're going to do outreach, I think that it should be clear where we are in the process. So I wouldn't want to get people excited and for some reason there's no approval to move forward with this. So I think there has to be some work done behind the scenes to at least get it semi-green lighted that this is going to be something that we're going to entertain going forward.
Any further discussion of UPTV focus? All right, hearing none. Discussion UPTV Commission's expectations for future meetings.
This goes back to, my desire to make these meetings meaningful. Something that I think we can all appreciate that Jason did was the highlight reels, which are always a lot of fun. As well as, it was always fun and exciting to hear about the social media he was doing or the projects he was doing. That was great stuff. Given that there's very little of that going on these days, it just doesn't seem worth the staff effort to try to recreate those things at this point in time. Social media would become another thing that, we could use help with. I did go back and looked into the city code that created the commission. One thing I'd like to point out, because there was a question last time about adding members to the commission, we do have the ability to have up to 9 seats. So given that, assuming the school district representative is placed, at that point we will have 5. We certainly are open to adding commissioners, and I'll make a general plea to the public who might be watching this meeting on UPTV that we would love to have more people get involved and be directly, providing guidance and input. The main purpose for the commission, as written in the city code, was to hear complaints from UPTV members. And I noted that I went back and looked, and I can say that since I joined the city in 2013, there have not been any complaints from UPTV members. The type of complaints were not specified, but I would imagine it would be something related to, I can't get my show recorded, you won't play my show, you're not playing my show often enough. But there have not been any complaints from the UPTV members. Commissioner Folk, did you have a...
I don't want to interrupt, but just to give a little background on that, the complaints were more that have happened in the past have been more related to content on UPTV, and I think that's what it was about. It was supposed to deal with people who were unhappy with the things that we were putting on the TV.
Yes, I was going to add, within recent years, as I've participated on here, the complaints that we have dealt, there were some, and the complaints that we had were from community members who would have something to say either about like these specific meetings and access to these meetings or content that's provided on the channel.
Right. And I'll have to go back and look at the language, but I mean,
Yeah.
I did note that in my time in the 8 years that I've been here, there have been 2 complaints from the public regarding content on UPTV. One was in January 2014, and it regarded content and profanity in a show that was broadcast after 11 p.m. in accordance with UPTV policies and FCC guidance. The other one was in January of 2018, and it was regarding content that we were playing from an outside. It was not locally produced content, but somebody had requested that we show this content. We did show the content. People found it offensive. It was preceded by a UPTV disclaimer, and we had a discussion around this and decided that UPTV does not take stances on content as long as it meets the guidance of the policies and procedures, and it's preceded by this statement that says it does not represent the views of the station and the city. We would continue to broadcast content even if some people did find it offensive. So, and that is, to me, that is we are a valid body to consider these complaints. So, the other note that I found is that when the UPTV Commission adopted rules and regulations in 2009, that was when it also requested an annual report and a copy of the budget request. So one of my questions here was, how do we want to proceed with meetings? Now, right now, what we just discussed about, moving forward, it gives us something real and tangible to discuss. And I'm not in any way saying that we should stop meeting, especially given that. But, maybe, and again, maybe this is a future topic, but once we get past and get to a new steady state, it may not be necessary for us to have each of our quarterly meetings. And so one of my proposals for consideration was to schedule quarterly meetings, but if there was no specific content for that month, we would notify people ahead of time, there's no content, we are not going to have this meeting. That was about as far as I got in terms of making suggestions.
I think having at least an annual meeting would be good. But yes, we can have the quarterly meetings, and you can always, due to a lack of agenda items, the next meeting is canceled. And other government bodies do that all the time.
I would suggest that if we were going to change up the meeting schedule, having even just intentionally getting rid of the quarterly meetings, even on a proactive basis, but instead having several meetings leading up to the annual meeting so that we can have a more productive meeting. So over the course of the 2 months prior to June 10th or whatever the scheduling is, if we had, a study session, a planning session, a study session, and then the actual meeting, we might be able to have more real stuff at the annual meeting.
I like that idea of, some sort of smaller meetings that are more focused. One challenge we face is that given the size of the commission right now, with even if 2 members meet, it becomes an open meetings act. Meeting, which means agendas and recording and broadcast, and so I'm not against it. I would hope that maybe we can find some more commission members to the point where we can have some small groups that would meet to discuss and can just kind of meet informally to move things forward without requiring as much pomp and circumstance just to get together and throw ideas around. So good thoughts all. What do we think of the meeting time? What do we think of this noon to 1 time?
I like it.
I think the time is excellent. You just eat your lunch at your desk afterward. That's all you do.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. It would also be difficult to slot ourselves during in the evening anyway, because of the busy calendar of meetings we already have. So I just wanted to make sure that it was going to continue to work for the commission members.
Yes, evening meetings would be a challenge for me.
Same. Mhm.
Good. Well,
I just
then.
want to add that Douglas Adams said that time is an illusion and lunchtime is doubly so. So that makes you.
Well, definitely once a quarter. Well, that makes sense. And I think, and listed at the bottom of the agenda, our next 2 meetings that are scheduled are September 9th at 12 noon and December 9th at 12 noon. So that will be our plan rolling forward. And most likely we'll continue on the same pattern. Each year around November, December, we publish the meetings for the next calendar year. So I expect that we'll continue with the same quarterly, noon, whatever Friday of the month schedule cycle we're on, we will maintain. So excellent. Well, thank you all for that discussion. Any further final comments on the meetings?
We'll just put them in your Outlook calendar and just know that that's happening, and it's an hour at most. It's not that difficult of a meeting to attend. So
Yeah, I can't sell it as well without the clip reel, but
yeah.
that did help.
Yes. Well, thanks all for your participation. Is there any new business to come before the commission? Hearing none, are there commissioners' comments?
I'll just say that I feel revitalized by the conversations that we've had today. I appreciate you, Sanford, reaching out to have personal conversations with us, to kind of bring us up to speed, to share your thoughts, to get us thinking about what the future might look like. I came to this meeting thinking that there might not be a purpose for us anymore, and so how do we move forward with supporting you and your role and the rest of the staff and everything? And I just feel really good about the conversations that we've had today. I feel like there are huge opportunities for us to make this even bigger and better than it was before, and so I'm hoping that those partnerships and collaborations come to fruition.
Very good. Any further comments? Well, as Sanford said, the next scheduled meeting of the UPTV Commission will be September 9th, 2022 at noon in Urbana City Council Chambers. Until that time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll let you go this time. Okay, I'll I'll go ahead. I move that we adjourn the meeting for today.
And a second.
I second.
Motion to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say no. We are adjourned. Thank you all.